The front door was wide open when I arrived, swinging gently in the evening breeze. At first, I thought my cousin had just forgotten to close it. He was careless like that. But when I stepped inside, the air felt heavy, wrong, like the house itself was holding its breath. Then I saw it. A pool of blood spread across the living room carpet, dark and sticky, like it had been there for hours. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. His keys were on the counter. His phone was plugged into the charger. But his car and he were gone. That was the night my cousin vanished without a trace. What none of us knew then was that the truth would stay buried for years, and when it finally surfaced, it would destroy us. Before we dive deeper into this chilling story on missing shadows, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss stories that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. I hadn't seen Evan in over 3 years. We weren't exactly close. He was my mom's sister's son, technically my first cousin, but we only ever saw each other at family funerals or the occasional Christmas Eve gathering. Still, when I got the call that night from his roommate saying something felt off, I agreed to check in on him. Evan had moved to Bridgeport, Connecticut a year earlier for a graphic design job that never really turned into anything. He stayed, though, bouncing between odd freelance gigs and late-night bar shifts. He shared a 2-bedroom apartment with 2 guys he'd met through Craigslist, both of them the scruffy, always slightly stoned, artsy types. They played in a band together and threw parties that spilled into the street. Evan had always floated toward people like that, reckless, loud, unpredictable. The opposite of me. I work in data processing. Live alone. Keep a tight schedule. Evan once told me I lived like someone who expected the world to end on Tuesday. I laughed when he said it, but he wasn't wrong. Still, I liked him. Evan was one of those people who made life feel like it could go anywhere. He was charismatic, but not in a showy way. He had this lazy charm, like he didn't need to try, and people just gravitated toward him. I always got the sense he was running from something. From what, I never asked. Maybe I should have. The last time we spoke was on my birthday. He called out of the blue and left a voicemail, singing some horrible off-key version of Happy Birthday in his best Elvis voice. I kept that voicemail. Still have it, actually. He ended it by saying, "Hey man, I know we don't talk much, but just so you know, I'm always rooting for you. Don't forget that." I didn't think much of it at the time. When I walked into his apartment that night and saw the blood, something in me cracked. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't Evan being weird. He was gone, and deep down, I already knew it wasn't something he'd done to himself. I looked around at the quiet mess of his living room. Ashtrays still full. Half a sandwich on the coffee table. The TV was still on. It was like someone had just hit pause on his life. And maybe, in a way, they had. The first thing I did after seeing that blood was call his name. My voice cracked as it echoed through the apartment, bouncing off the narrow walls and landing back in my chest like a stone. No answer. No sound. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the faint static from the TV still flickering in the corner. The blood wasn't just a smear. It was a pool. Thick and congealed. It had soaked into the cheap beige carpet, spreading toward the hallway. Someone had tried to clean it, but not well. There were faint streaks where a mop or rag had smeared it around. That's when I noticed something else. Drag marks. Barely visible, like shadows in the carpet fibers, leading from the living room toward the door. My stomach knotted. I backed into the kitchen and grabbed my phone, hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. 911 felt like the only option, but before I could hit the call button, the front door creaked open behind me. It was one of his roommates, Chase, I think his name was. Tall, wiry, the kind of guy who looked like he lived on black coffee and Marlboros. He froze when he saw me, eyes darting from my face to the blood, then back again. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, running a hand through his messy hair. I told him to chill, man. I told him. What the hell happened here? My voice came out harsher than I meant. He didn't answer right away. Just paced, chewing at the skin around his nails. He was freaking out last night. Said somebody was after him. I thought he was just tripping or something. After him? Who? I don't know, man. He didn't say. He just... Chase stopped and looked me dead in the eyes. You didn't see him leave, did you? Before I could respond, the second roommate appeared, Ryan. Stockier, tattoos crawling up his arms, a guy who always looked like he was smirking even when nothing was funny. He walked in slow, glanced at the blood like he was checking a stain on his shirt, then shrugged. Guess he finally pissed off the wrong person, Ryan said, his voice flat. What the hell does that mean? I shot back, my heart pounding. He didn't answer, just grabbed a beer from the fridge, popped it open, and took a swig. Like this was just another Tuesday. That's when I made the call. My fingers were trembling so badly it took 3 tries to punch in 911. The cops showed up fast, 2 cruisers, lights flashing against the peeling paint of the building. They took one look at the blood and sealed the place off with yellow tape. Questions came at me like bullets. When did I last see him? Did he have enemies? Drugs? I didn't know what to say. I barely knew the guy beyond family gatherings and a handful of awkward texts. But one thing stuck in my head, circling like a vulture. His keys were still there. His phone was still there. His car and he were gone. As they bagged evidence and took statements, I sat on the curb outside, the cool night pressing against my skin. My mind kept replaying the voicemail he left me months ago. I'm always rooting for you. It sounded like goodbye now. By midnight, the apartment was crawling with uniforms and crime scene techs. They led the roommates out in handcuffs, not because they had proof, but because something about their calm was too unsettling. Still, by morning they were out again. No arrest. No body. No car. And that's how it started, the night that swallowed Evan whole. By the next morning, the story had already hit the local news. Bridgeport man missing after bloody scene found in apartment, scrolled across the bottom of the TV screen as I sat in my kitchen, hands wrapped around a coffee mug I wasn't drinking. They showed Evan's picture, a selfie he'd taken at some party, grinning with a beer in his hand, and it felt surreal, like they were talking about someone else. The police called me back in for more questions that afternoon. Same stuff as the night before, just in a gray interview room that smelled like old paper and disinfectant. When did you last see your cousin? Any idea if he was into drugs? Owed money? Got in a fight? No. And no, I kept saying, each word grinding against my throat like gravel. But then they asked something that made my stomach tighten. Was he planning to leave town? Not that I know of. Why? His bank account was almost emptied last week. Big withdrawal. Cash. I didn't know what to make of that. Evan was broke most of the time. He lived paycheck to paycheck. What the hell would he need thousands of dollars in cash for? The detectives weren't saying much, but I could read it in their eyes. They were already building a story. Blood on the floor. No forced entry. Roommates acting sketchy. It didn't take a genius to see where this was going. And honestly, I agreed with them. Chase and Ryan. Something about the way they stood there that night, so calm, like they'd rehearsed every expression. It burned in my gut. But then days turned into weeks. And weeks into months. No arrest. No new evidence. Just silence. The blood in the apartment? Evan's, but no fingerprints except for his and the roommates, which made sense. No weapon. No surveillance footage. And the car, that car, was nowhere. The cops stopped calling after the first year. The news cycle moved on. But I couldn't. I'd lie awake at night staring at my ceiling, replaying every word from that voicemail. Every stupid family gathering memory. Wondering if I could have stopped this somehow. My mom told me to let it go. My friends stopped asking about it. Life went on for everyone but me. I started doing my own digging, stupid as it sounds. Searching his social media for clues. Messaging old friends he'd hung out with. Even met up with a girl he'd dated briefly, a barista named Lila. She cried when we talked, said Evan had been acting off the last time she saw him. Kept talking about getting out and starting fresh. Did he say why? I asked. She shook her head. Just that people weren't who they seemed. I thought he was just being dramatic. People aren't who they seemed. That line stayed with me, like a thorn under the skin. 2 years passed like that. Me chasing ghosts. My life shrinking down to a handful of blurry obsessions and late-night rabbit holes. I started drinking more. Missed work. My apartment piled up with takeout boxes and old notebooks filled with names, dates, maps. All dead ends. And then, just when I thought the world had buried Evan for good, the case resurfaced on national TV. I'd almost stopped expecting answers by then. Almost. It had been just over 3 years since Evan disappeared. 3 birthdays. 3 Christmases where his name was only spoken in half-whispers, like saying it too loud might break something inside us all. My aunt aged a decade in those years. My mom stopped watching the news altogether because every missing person segment sent her spiraling. I still kept a folder, thick and ragged, full of everything I'd found, which wasn't much. A few old photos. My notes from conversations with his friends. Printed screenshots from social media. I couldn't throw it away, even when it felt pointless. That night, I wasn't even planning to turn on the TV. I'd been drinking whiskey straight from the bottle when my phone buzzed with a text from an old coworker. "Hey, isn't this your cousin?" Attached was a blurry photo of a TV screen. Evan's face. That grin. Next to the bold letters, "Unsolved Mysteries. Who killed Evan Carter?" My chest went tight. I fumbled for the remote, turned on the TV, and there it was. The episode already halfway through. Grainy footage of the apartment. The bloodstain blurred for viewers. Interviews with detectives I hadn't seen in years. And then my aunt, sitting stiff in a chair, eyes hollow but fierce. "I just want to know what happened to my son," she said. Her voice cracked, and something inside me cracked with it. They laid out the timeline just like I remembered it. April 14th, Evan goes missing. April 15th, I find the blood. April 16th, detectives question Chase and Ryan, then release them. No arrests. No car. No body. Case cold. When the episode ended, they flashed the hotline number across the screen. "If you have any information on the disappearance of Evan Carter, please call." I didn't sleep that night. Didn't eat the next day. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts from people I hadn't talked to in years. Everyone suddenly remembered Evan. Everyone suddenly cared. But then came the tips. Hundreds of them, according to the detective who called me a week later. Most were garbage. Psychics, conspiracy theorists, people claiming they saw Evan in Texas or Florida. Still, every time my phone lit up, hope surged in my chest like a cruel trick. And then, almost 6 months after the episode aired, it happened. I was at work, half listening to someone drone on about data points, when my phone rang. A known number. I almost didn't answer. "Mr. Brooks." The voice was tight, official. "This is Detective Alvarez, Bridgeport PD. We need you to come in." But what happened? My throat felt like sandpaper. "We got a tip this morning. A location." My heart stalled. "A location for what?" "The car," he said quietly. "We think we found Evan's car." For a second, everything around me went silent. The office noise, the click of keyboards, even my own heartbeat. All I could hear was the sound of that voicemail playing in my head. "I'm always rooting for you." They told me to sit tight, that they'd call when they had confirmation. But I couldn't. I left work, got in my car, and drove aimlessly for hours. Staring at the phone. Waiting for it to ring again. When it finally did, night had fallen. The car was at the bottom of a river. The river was black under the floodlights, rippling in the night like something alive. It was colder than I expected for late spring, the kind of cold that cuts through your jacket and gnaws at your bones. I parked on the shoulder and walked toward the flashing blue and red lights, my heart pounding like a drum in my throat. The scene looked like something out of a movie. Police cruisers lined up along the bank, a crane truck poised like a giant metal claw, and clusters of people standing behind yellow tape, murmuring in hushed voices. Reporters had already started to gather, their cameras aimed at the water as if hoping to catch history clawing its way out. I spotted Detective Alvarez near the edge, his breath a pale mist in the air. He saw me coming and motioned me over, his face solemn, the kind of expression that told me everything without saying a word. "You didn't have to come," he said quietly. "Yes, I did." My voice cracked, but I didn't care. The crane's steel cables groaned as the divers resurfaced, water cascading off their suits. One of them shouted something I couldn't make out, and then the machinery roared to life. The crowd went silent. All you could hear was the mechanical whine and the rush of the river as the crane pulled its prize from the depths. And then it appeared, slow at first, like a shadow rising, then solid metal breaking the surface with a sickening splash. Evan's car, or what was left of it. The blue paint was mottled with algae, windows shattered, trunk sealed shut like a clenched fist. Water poured out of its broken seams, dark and filthy, as the crane swung it toward the embankment and lowered it onto the mud. The stench hit me next, a foul cocktail of river rot and something far worse. Something human. I gagged and pressed a fist to my mouth, but I couldn't look away. Alvarez touched my shoulder. "You should stand back." "No," I whispered. My legs felt like concrete, but I didn't move. The techs moved in with crowbars, prying at the trunk as the metal groaned in protest. Every second stretched like an eternity. My mind kept flashing images I didn't want. Evan laughing at a family barbecue, Evan singing off-key on my voicemail, Evan walking through this world alive. And then the trunk popped open with a hollow clang. What was inside didn't look like Evan, not anymore. Just a dark shape curled in on itself, bone where there should be flesh, tatters of fabric clinging like ghosts of clothes he once wore. But I knew. God, I knew. My knees gave out and I hit the ground hard. I don't remember the sound I made, just that it tore out of me like something primal, something I didn't know I had. A cop tried to steady me, but I shoved him away. My chest felt like it was caving in, the air ripped from my lungs. Evan had been here the whole time. 3 years in the dark, while the world moved on. The detectives worked quietly, almost reverently, as they zipped the remains into a black body bag and hoisted it onto a stretcher. Cameras flashed in the distance, vultures hungry for their shot. Alvarez crouched beside me, his voice low and careful. "We'll know more after the autopsy. But, based on the condition, we think he was put here the night he disappeared." I stared at him through a haze of tears. "The roommates," I said hoarsely. "It had to be them." He didn't argue. Didn't agree either. Just said, "We'll see." As they loaded Evan into the van, I thought about that last voicemail again. "I'm always rooting for you." Like some cosmic joke. He believed in me, and I'd spent 3 years believing in nothing. I stayed by the river long after the lights faded, long after the crowd dispersed, until the mud froze under my shoes and the cold sank into my bones. And even then, one thought kept pounding in my head, relentless and cruel. But the call came 3 days after they pulled Evan from the river. I hadn't slept more than an hour at a time since that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the trunk crack open again, smelled that stench, heard the hollow clang of metal. Detective Alvarez's voice was steady, but it carried a weight that made my grip tighten on the phone. "We have them in custody," he said. I didn't need to ask who. Chase and Ryan. "They confessed?" I asked, my voice low, sharp, like a blade I couldn't control. "Not yet," he said, "but they will. You can count on that." The station smelled like burnt coffee and sweat when I walked in, my heart pounding like it was trying to break out of my ribs. Alvarez met me at the door, his face carved from stone. "You sure you want to be here?" "Yes." But you don't talk. You don't engage. You just observe." "Understood." I nodded, though I didn't trust myself to obey that rule. Through the one-way glass, I saw them. Chase sat slouched in the metal chair, his wiry frame twitching like he had a nest of bees under his skin. Ryan was next door, arms folded across his chest, expressionless, like a man who already knew how this would end. The interrogation started slow. Alvarez knew how to work them. Questions about that night, about the blood, about the lies they told. At first, they denied everything. Evan left on his own. "We don't know what happened. Someone else must have done it." The usual script. Then Alvarez slid the photos across the table, Evan's car dragged from the river, the black body bag zipped tight. Chase stared at them for a long moment, his fingers trembling against the metal edge. His breath came shallow fast, and then he cracked. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that," he blurted out, voice breaking. "We didn't mean to kill him." The room went silent except for the hum of the fluorescent lights. Alvarez leaned in, calm as a surgeon. "Tell me what happened, Chase." Chase swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing like a cork in water. He was gonna leave. He had cash, like 10 grand. Said he was starting over, and he wasn't taking us with him. After everything we did for him. After all the bills we covered. He said we were dead weight. Ryan's version came later, but the story matched. They confronted Evan that night. Things got heated. Ryan shoved him. Evan hit his head on the corner of the counter, and suddenly there was blood everywhere. Too much blood. Evan wasn't moving. Panic took over. They cleaned what they could, stuffed him in the trunk, and drove to the river in the middle of the night. Weighted the car with cinder blocks and watched it disappear into the black water. Then they went home, smoked a joint, and pretended none of it happened. My stomach twisted so hard I thought I might throw up right there in the observation room. They'd left him in the dark for 3 years because of money. $10,000 and a bruised ego. And then came the part that broke me completely. He wasn't dead, Chase whispered, tears streaking his hollow cheeks. When we closed the trunk, he made a sound. Like he was trying to say something. His voice cracked. But we didn't open it. We just left. I staggered back from the glass, choking on air that wouldn't come. The room tilted. My hands clawed at the wall because the alternative was hitting the floor. Evan hadn't just died. He died knowing. Trapped in the dark, calling out for help that never came. They both pled guilty in the end, second-degree murder. 25 years each. My aunt sat stone-faced in the courtroom as the sentences were read, her grief a sharp, invisible thing slicing through the air. I couldn't even look at them. If I did, I don't know what I would have done. Afterward, people kept telling me justice was served. That this was closure. But the truth? There's no closure when you know someone you loved died like that. There's just a hollow space where their voice used to be. I listen to that voicemail sometimes. The one where he sang off-key and told me he was rooting for me. It feels like a message from another life. A better one. People think answers fix things. That once you know the truth, the pieces slide back into place, and life becomes whole again. They're wrong. I know who killed Evan. I know why. I even sat in court and watched them put those monsters in chains. But every night when I close my eyes, I see the river swallowing that car. I hear Chase's voice cracking as he admitted the worst part, that Evan was still alive when they shut the trunk. That detail lives in my head like a parasite. It eats everything else. I go through the motions now. Bills. Sleep, on the rare nights I can. But I'm not the same person who walked into that apartment 3 years ago. That guy thought the world made sense. That people weren't capable of burying their secrets so deep the earth itself had to spit them out. Sometimes I drive to the river. Park on the same stretch of gravel where I watched them haul his car out of the water. I stand there until my fingers go numb, staring at the black current rushing past like it's trying to erase everything. But it can't. My aunt moved away after the trial. Too many ghosts in that town. Mom doesn't talk about Evan anymore. Says it hurts too much. I don't blame her. For me, silence hurts more. So I keep his picture on my desk, the one from that party where he's grinning like life couldn't touch him. And every now and then, when the weight of it all presses too hard, I play his voicemail. Hear that terrible Elvis impression and his last words to me, "I'm always rooting for you." I wish I'd told him the same. People disappear every day. Some vanish because they choose to. Others because someone decides their life isn't worth what's in their wallet. But here's the thing I can't shake. You never think it'll be someone you know. Someone who once laughed in your kitchen, someone who left you a dumb voicemail just to make you smile. If I've learned anything, it's this. When you care about someone, tell them. Tell them today. Because one day you might be standing on a riverbank, staring at the dark water, wishing you had one more chance to say the words you saved for later. Later doesn't always come. If this story gave you chills, drop a comment with your thoughts below. And if you want more real-life mysteries like this, subscribe now and check out the next video waiting for you on the screen. Trust me, you won't want to miss it.